A widow was crying alone as she walked at night, lamenting the death of her husband. When she turned the corner, she turned pale upon seeing her husband entering a dark alley. Scarlet Grace was a very strong and determined woman. Despite being consumed by grief over the loss of her husband, she found the strength to take care of their son Matthew, who was only 8 years old. Every day, religiously, she looked at the last note left by her late husband. The words gave her strength to carry on with life and to be strong. "I love you, my dear. Believe in yourself," said the note. These were the last words he left her before dying during his shift as a police officer. After losing him, Scarlet's black hair had become dull, her brown eyes lost their sparkle, and even her tanned skin seemed faded with sorrow. In her hurried daily routine, she tucked the note into her wallet while rushing her son to school. "Come on, Matthew, we can't be late," she urged, grabbing her son's backpack. "Yes, Mommy, I'm coming," Matthew replied, appearing on the stairs. The boy looked so much like her late husband that she felt instantly happier seeing him. The boy had the same gray eyes as Henry, a reminder of the man Scarlet loved. As Scarlet walked hurriedly down the busy street with her son, each step was a reminder of the void left by Henry. Will this ever pass? She wondered, trying to push away the pain that felt as fresh as the day she received the news of her husband's death. Distracted, walking down the sidewalk with her son, her eyes met those of a stranger who could very well have been Henry's living image. The man was identical to her husband, and seeing him made Scarlet freeze, her heart pounding wildly. "It can't be," she whispered to herself, feeling a mix of hope and despair. At that moment, Matthew squeezed her hand. "Mommy, are you okay?" His voice was full of concern, pulling Scarlet back to reality. "Yes, dear, just a little tired," she replied, forcing a smile, but her mind was already spinning, full of unanswered questions. At first, Scarlet believed she was going crazy. It must be a mirage, she thought to herself. However, after a few steps, Matthew also spoke up. "Is that Daddy?" he asked, so happy that Scarlet began to think they were both hallucinating at seeing the man. "No, Matthew, your daddy is with the angels," she said, her voice trembling. "Why don't you go into school? I believe your teacher will love to see the drawing you made," she continued, handing her son his backpack without taking her eyes off the man who looked like Henry. "That's true. Daddy went with the angels. I'll make another nice drawing for him to see from heaven," Matthew said before saying goodbye to his mother at the school gate. After watching Matthew walk through the school gate, Scarlet's maternal worry turned into overwhelming curiosity. But when she turned her attention back to the man on the sidewalk, she couldn't see him. He had disappeared. "Are Matthew and I going crazy?" she thought. It had been weeks since her husband had died. Maybe the lack of him was messing with their heads. Later that day, Scarlet called Zoe, Henry's only sister, asking her to watch Matthew for a few minutes. Her sister-in-law was a brilliant and busy lawyer, so Scarlet avoided asking her for help despite Zoe's protests. "You're doing a great job on your own, Scarlet, but you can ask me for help. I'll be here," she said, looking Scarlet in the eye. "My brother would be proud of you," Zoe said, referring to how Scarlet took care of her son. However, Scarlet still hadn't gotten used to taking care of Matthew on her own. She had just started her vacation from her job as a cleaner, so it was good that she had the next few weeks to adapt to her new life, as she was still getting used to the routine of being a single mother, especially since she couldn't be sad in front of her son and needed to be strong all day long. Scarlet just wanted a few minutes to walk and clear her mind of sad thoughts. "I can't cry in front of Matthew. I need to be strong. Walking will help me," she thought as she left the house. However, after a few meters, Scarlet was overcome with tears. "I miss you, Henry," she cried, looking at the street. Suddenly, looking at the alley at the end of the street, Scarlet saw Henry, her husband, entering a dark place. In an automatic gesture, she walked towards him, feeling her heart leap in her chest. "I must be going crazy," she thought. However, the man turned to her, his eyes attentive to Scarlet. "Sorry, I couldn't help but notice. You look very familiar," she said, trying to hide the tremor in her voice. The man was wearing the same clothes she had seen him in earlier, near Matthew's school, a few blocks away. "Say you're Henry," she hoped in her thoughts. He even wore her husband's cologne. "It must be my Henry," she thought. The man looked at her with an enigmatic expression, his gray eyes widening as if he recognized Scarlet, but was pretending otherwise. "It's funny you say that," he replied, his voice soft but firm. I can't remember much about my past. I had an accident and lost my memory. But there's something about you that seems familiar somehow. Those words hit Scarlett like a bolt of lightning. What do you mean you don't remember? She asked, the surprise overcoming her reserve. You don't know who you are? He ran his hand through his hair, seeming to struggle with the fog of his own memories. It's complicated. I woke up in a hospital a few months ago with no memory of my life. The doctor said it was a miracle I survived the accident, but as for remembering who I am or who I was, it's still a mystery. Scarlett absorbed his words, understanding the emotional weight of what he had just revealed. And you think you know me? She asked, hope and fear dancing in her heart. There were some differences in the man's face that were different from her Henry. Her husband did not have a cruel gleam in his eyes like this stranger. Besides, the angle of his face was different. Do you remember anything else? She asked, feeling crazy for thinking they might be the same person. I don't know. Actually, I just moved to the neighborhood, so maybe it's just a trick of my mind trying to fill in the gaps. I'm sorry, he said, seeming disturbed. I have to go, he said before starting to run away from Scarlett, as if she were a ghost dropping a document from his pocket. Scarlett tried to call out to him, but he ignored her. Your document fell, she shouted, but the man kept running. She looked at her hands and observed the name printed on the paper. Sebastian Jack, she read aloud. As she looked at the photo, she wondered why they looked so similar. However, what stuck in Scarlett's mind was that the man, upon seeing her, acted as if he recognized her. How is that possible? She thought. Determined to investigate, Scarlett returned home with Sebastian's identity in hand. She was overwhelmed with a tide of confusion and curiosity. The unexpected encounter and the striking physical similarities between Sebastian and her late husband Henry had planted a seed of doubt in her heart. Could it be possible? She shook her head, trying to dismiss the absurd thought that Henry and Sebastian could be the same person. Scarlett knew it seemed crazy, but maybe if Henry had suffered an accident, surgery could have slightly altered his facial features. No, it can't be. However, a doubt persisted because she hadn't had the chance to say goodbye to her husband. He had been killed during his job as a police officer, a crime so cruel that she couldn't say goodbye. It's good that I only saw my husband alive, she thought, but this made everything make sense because Scarlett hadn't seen her husband dead. With this persistent doubt hammering in her mind, Scarlett went to Henry's office, determined to look for some explanation, something the police might have missed about her husband's death. The office still carried Henry's scent from weeks ago, as if his cologne were still clinging to the old paper. She began to search through Henry's work documents, hoping to find something that could clarify her doubts about Sebastian Jack. Then, surprisingly, Scarlett found a false bottom in the desk. There she found a folder discreetly marked with Sebastian's name. Her heart pounded as she flipped through the documents and photos revealing that Henry knew Sebastian. Or maybe they are the same person. Scarlett closely examined the photos of Sebastian, noticing small differences that separated them from the perfect image of Henry in her memory. A slightly harder look here, a slightly different angle of the face there. Still, the resemblance was undeniable. The documents suggested that her husband was involved in something dangerous, possibly related to why Henry had died. In one of the papers there was a photo of Henry, but the name printed on the paper was Sebastian's, suggesting he was using this name as his own. Was Henry protecting Sebastian, or protecting himself using his name? She pondered, more confused than ever. The possibility that Henry was alive somewhere, maybe suffering from amnesia as Sebastian had suggested, was an idea she couldn't completely dismiss no matter how hard she tried. Determined to uncover the truth, Scarlett knew she needed to find Sebastian again. I need answers, she decided, driven by the need to close the wounds of the past and the fragile hope that Henry might somehow be alive. If Sebastian was really suffering from amnesia, perhaps there was a chance, however small, to unravel the mysteries surrounding Henry's last days and Sebastian Jack's true identity. The next day, after dropping her beloved son at school, Scarlett went to the address she found in Henry's papers. Should I continue this pursuit? She thought, fearing she was losing her sanity. I can't live with this doubt, she decided as she entered an old building. Scarlett took her husband's old gun from her bag, remembering how he used to say she had baker's hands and should never have a gun. Now she saw that Henry was right about that, but she wouldn't enter a place with a criminal unprotected. Although everything pointed to her husband being involved with a criminal organization, Scarlett still trusted him enough not to believe that, despite all the documents suggesting he had lied. My Henry wouldn't commit a crime and deceive me like this, she thought as she rang the doorbell. The hollow sound of the doorbell echoed through the empty hallway, increasing the tension Scarlett felt. She waited, her heart pounding, but there was no response. The door remained closed, a silent obstacle between her and the answer she desperately sought. Maybe no one is home, she thought, considering her next steps. However, something inside her refused to go home without trying one more time. Scarlett was about to ring the bell again when a neighbor came out of an apartment across the hallway. He looked at her with a mix of curiosity and caution. Seizing the opportunity, Scarlett approached. "Sorry to bother you. I'm looking for Sebastian Jack. Do you know if he lives here?" she asked, trying to appear as calm as possible. The neighbor looked at her for a moment before answering. "Sebastian? He moved out last night in a hurry. Said something about having to leave quickly. He didn't give details." His tone suggested he wasn't surprised by Sebastian's sudden departure, but he didn't have any more information to offer. Scarlett felt a wave of frustration and despair. Sebastian had disappeared, along with the chance to find answers about Henry and the strange connections that seemed to link them. She thanked the neighbor, who seemed in a hurry to get to work. Once alone in the hallway again, she recalled her husband teaching her how to open doors with a hairpin. At the time, she had lost her key and had stayed outside for hours. When she got home, her husband taught her how to solve that problem so she wouldn't have to stay in the sun for so long again, always concerned about her well-being. "I need to know the truth," she murmured, looking over her shoulder to make sure she was alone and that the neighbor wouldn't return, before taking the hairpin from her hair and easily opening Sebastian's door. Inside the apartment, Scarlett felt a mix of adrenaline and fear. The space was quiet, as if it held the secrets she desperately sought. The place was in disarray, with signs of a hasty departure, papers scattered on the table, some clothes thrown on a chair, and a half-finished cup of coffee now cold on the kitchen counter. "I knew he was hiding something," she murmured. Scarlett began to meticulously search the apartment, looking for anything that could shed light on the connection between Sebastian and Henry. It was then that she found a suitcase with a small diary. The first pages were filled with notes that seemed to be coded, impossible to decipher immediately. But as she flipped through the diary, she found something that made her freeze. There was a photo of Henry clearly taken years ago. He was smiling, looking happy. Next to the photo, a note in her husband's handwriting read, "The mission is getting dangerous. Al insists we can trust each other with our lives. I hope he's right." Scarlett felt the ground shift beneath her feet. The revelation that Henry knew Sebastian so intimately and that they had shared some kind of dangerous mission was a puzzle piece she never expected to find. "What were you doing, Henry?" she murmured, tears starting to form in her eyes. The discovery that her husband had a secret life, which might have led to his death, was almost too much to bear. There in the apartment, she also found many forged documents of other people, evidence of a fraudulent gang. There were photos of victims and possible documents. How could I trust you, Henry? With the diary in hand, Scarlett knew she needed help to decipher the coded notes. She thought of Matthew, remembering how Henry loved teaching their son to solve puzzles. Maybe there's a message here he wanted me to find, she pondered, feeling determined to move forward despite the pain. Scarlett continued searching until she saw a photo of her son and started trembling. She stared at the photo of Matthew, a wave of emotion enveloping her like a storm. The photograph had clearly been taken without her knowledge, showing Matthew playing in the park, the innocent joy of a child evident on his face. How? Why is this photo here? She wondered, barely able to formulate the thought. The presence of that image of her son in Sebastian's apartment in his hideout was a revelation that brought with it a new level of fear and concern. Why would Sebastian have a photo of Matthew, she asked herself, her heart beating uncontrollably. The discovery raised alarming questions about her son's safety and the true nature of the relationship between Henry and Sebastian. The idea that Matthew might somehow be involved or in danger because of her husband's secret actions was unbearable. With the decision to protect Matthew at all costs, Scarlett carefully tucked the photo away along with the diary. She knew she couldn't ignore this discovery. "If they harm my son, I'll destroy them," she muttered to herself, as fierce as a lioness defending her cub. This determination spurred her to photograph everything in the apartment. Continuing her search, Scarlett found a USB drive hidden inside a table clock. Instinctively, she understood that this device might contain crucial information about the mission mentioned in the diary and possibly explain the connection between Sebastian and Henry. With the diary, the photo of Matthew, and the USB drive in hand, Scarlett knew the next step of her quest would require caution and cunning. "I need to be smart about this. I can't put Matthew or myself in more danger," she thought, already planning how to access the information on the USB drive safely, and who could help her decipher the coded notes in the diary. The search for the truth about her husband had turned into a determination to protect her son. Nothing was more important than keeping Matthew safe. However, everything seemed increasingly dangerous. "I will find out what you were trying to tell me, Henry. It can't be that you always lied to me," she said, more determined than ever to follow the clues he had left behind, no matter how dark or deep they led her. Despite everything being against her husband, Scarlett couldn't believe that the man she loved could be capable of something so bad that it would involve their son. She remembered all the sweet words Henry used to say. "Trust yourself, you will make it," he exclaimed when she told him that her dream was to have her own bakery. Her friends used to mock her for being a housemaid who wanted to have her own bakery. Even when it seemed impossible, Henry believed in her and said encouraging words. How could he be a criminal? Suddenly, the apartment's light went out as if someone had turned off the building's switch. The sudden darkness engulfed the apartment, leaving Scarlett immobilized by shock. She barely had time to process the change before feeling a hand press firmly over her mouth, silencing any scream that might escape. Her heart raced, fear running through her veins like ice, and then that voice, a voice she knew better than her own, whispered dangerously close to her ear. "Don't get involved in this, Scarlett. Go home. I love you, my dear." Those words, spoken in Henry's voice, sent waves of confusion and despair through Scarlett. How could this be possible? She struggled, trying to break free, but the hands holding her were too strong. Then, as suddenly as they had come, the hands released her, and silence fell over the dark apartment again. "I'm crazy," she thought, trying to see her husband in the darkness. Scarlett stood still for a moment, trying to catch her breath, her heart pounding uncontrollably in her chest. "Henry?" she whispered in the dark apartment, but there was no response. As her eyes began to adjust to the darkness, she searched frantically for any sign of his presence but found herself alone. To her horror, she realized that the photo of Matthew, which she had in her hand, had disappeared. Panic and desolation flooded her as the reality of the situation set in. Her husband's voice, her son's missing photo, all of this meant that the situation was far more dangerous and personal than she could have ever imagined. Scarlett felt stunned, betrayed, and incredibly alone in the darkness. She needed to get out of there, and fast. With trembling hands, Scarlett put the USB drive in her bag, determined to leave the apartment before whoever it was came back. She instinctively grabbed everything she could find and stuffed it into her bag to have evidence. "I have to get my son from school. It's not safe now," she thought, a fierce determination replacing the fear. However, grabbing all the documents in the dark took longer than she would have liked. Every cell in her body wanted to run home with Matthew, to her son's safety. But she needed something against those criminals in case they tried to harm her little one. When she picked Matthew up from school a few hours later, she sensed something was wrong. The children were playing in the yard under the teacher's distracted supervision, but Matthew was not among them. Her quick steps turned into a run to the teacher's room, where she was met with an expression of surprise and concern. Her heart was already beating at an alarming rate. "Scarlett, I thought Matthew had already gone home. Your husband came to pick him up a few minutes ago," the teacher said, clearly unaware of the storm those words would unleash. "My husband?" Scarlett's voice was a strangled whisper, her worst fears coming to life. "This can't be happening," she thought, her heart racing. Henry had been dead for weeks, but with so many problems on her mind, she had forgotten to inform the school about the incident. Without wasting another second, Scarlett ran out of the school, panic and despair guiding her steps. She had barely processed the situation when her phone rang. With trembling hands, she answered, and a distorted voice filled her ears whose words cut her heart with surgical precision. "Scarlett, if you keep looking for answers, your Matthew won't be safe. Give up now and he will come home safely," the voice said, making Scarlett's world crumble around her. The fear of losing her son was overwhelming. Continuing her search for the truth about Henry, risking Matthew's safety, seemed impossible. Nothing was more important to her than her son, but she knew that if her husband was alive, he was in trouble. The decision was torturous, a weight she never imagined she would have to bear. And if Henry is alive and in trouble, I could lose him again to these criminals, she thought, unable to believe her husband was involved in the frauds. "Who are you? What do you want from us?" Scarlett demanded from the man on the phone, trying to control the tremor in her voice. "If you harm my son, I'll destroy you," she threatened, feeling her chest tighten, fearing for Matthew's life. "It's not who I am that matters. It's what you do from now on. Give up, Scarlett, for Matthew." The call ended abruptly, leaving Scarlett in deafening silence. The options before her were cruel and time was running out. With a broken heart, she knew what she had to do. "I love you, Matthew. I'll keep you safe, no matter the cost," she whispered to herself, a silent promise to her son that she hoped she could keep. It took an hour of agony, but it felt as if time had stopped until Matthew appeared at the door. "Mommy, I had ice cream with Daddy," he said, with such joy that Scarlett had to hide the fears clouding her mind. "What, my love?" she asked, her voice trembling, feeling as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. "Daddy took me to the park and we had ice cream. He's not in heaven anymore, Mommy," he rejoiced, hugging Scarlett. Matthew's words, so innocent and full of joy, were like knives in Scarlett's heart. The reunion with her son brought immense relief, but the circumstances under which it occurred plunged her into an abyss of uncertainties and fear. "He's not in heaven anymore, Mommy. How could Matthew speak so confidently about seeing his father if Henry was dead? And who was the man pretending to be her husband, dragging her son into this dangerous charade?" The house, once a sanctuary of love and happy memories, now felt like a prison of doubts and dark secrets. Scarlett felt the weight of loneliness pressing in on her from all sides, even as she embraced her son. She was surrounded by friends and family who insisted she should move on, who insisted Henry was gone and she was clinging to fantasies because she couldn't cope with her loss when she talked about the strange circumstances of Henry's death. "You're creating illusions. There's nothing wrong, he's gone. Stop suspecting everything," they said. But now, with Matthew talking about seeing his father, how could Scarlett ignore the possibility that something was very wrong? The choice before her was torturous. If she continued to seek the truth, unraveling the conspiracy linking Henry, Sebastian Jack, and other criminals, she would be putting herself and Matthew in danger. On the other hand, retreating to the safety of her solitude meant ignoring the questions burning inside her, living with doubt, and perhaps never knowing what really happened to Henry. That night, while Matthew slept peacefully, Scarlett stayed awake, wrestling with her conscience. The promise to keep Matthew safe was at war with her need to seek answers. What did Henry want to tell me? What was he trying to protect? The loneliness of her search, once a bearable burden, now felt unbearable. Henry's absence, the presence of an unknown danger, and the impossibility of trusting anyone left her completely isolated. Finally, she made a decision. Scarlett couldn't simply retreat, not when there was so much at stake. She began carefully planning her next steps, knowing that each move from now on needed to be calculated with precision. She needed to protect Matthew, but she also needed to unravel the mystery surrounding Henry's death. With renewed determination, Scarlett decided that no matter how deep the conspiracy or how dangerous the path, she would find a way to confront it. For Matthew, for Henry, and for herself. Scarlett spent the night awake, drafting a plan that could protect Matthew while allowing her to continue her quest for the truth. She knew she needed allies, people she could trust implicitly. The first person who came to mind was Henry's only sister. As a lawyer with resources and a keen mind for strategy, Zoe would know how to help. Though she had been one of the voices urging Scarlett to let the past go, Scarlett trusted that when it came to Matthew's safety, she would stand by her without hesitation. In the morning, Scarlett went to meet Zoe. While her son played in the yard, she explained everything to her sister-in-law: Sebastian's appearance, the threats, Henry's visit that Matthew mentioned, and most importantly, her determination to uncover the truth. Zoe listened in silence, absorbing every word, the worry evident in her eyes. "You're not alone in this, Scarlett. We will protect Matthew no matter what it costs. I've always admired your strength for raising my brother's son alone after he was gone. I never saw you despair, even with your grief. You managed to care for him with love. I will help you," Zoe finally said, her decision bringing tears to Scarlett's eyes. Together they devised a plan to keep Matthew safe, alternating his stay between trusted family members, making it difficult for anyone to reach him. "But I must warn you, my brother is dead, Scarlett. If you go after this organization, it could be dangerous for you. Henry can no longer help you. He really is gone. If you search for these criminals, you'll be in danger." "You think I'm crazy, don't you? Matthew saw him too," Scarlett argued. "I don't care if it's risky. Even if you're right and Henry is dead, now I need to clear my husband's name. I can't let him be, maybe one day, associated with a criminal organization," she said, feeling tears streaming down her face. And if she's right, if somehow they managed to trick us into believing Sebastian was Henry, she thought, confused. "I need to know the truth, Zoe, no matter how painful or dangerous it is. I can't live in this uncertainty," Scarlett said firmly, wiping away her tears. She was determined, even knowing that this decision could lead her to confront forces she didn't fully understand. Zoe nodded, understanding her sister-in-law's determination, but the fear for her safety was palpable. "Then we'll do this together, but we need to be smart. I'll contact some friends who can help us investigate without drawing too much attention." As the two women delved deeper into the investigation, the risks became increasingly clear. Evidence began to surface, suggesting that the criminal organization Henry might have been involved with was more dangerous and influential than they had imagined. Each discovery brought with it a new level of danger, and it soon became evident that they were being watched. Scarlett began to notice unfamiliar cars parked near her house, and anonymous phone calls with veiled threats became a daily occurrence. She memorized the numbers they used to call her, noting that the numbering was different from when Matthew was taken. However, the feeling of being constantly watched was suffocating, and the isolation from her friends and family, now necessary to protect them, left Scarlett fighting against desolation. The deep crisis reached its peak one night when Scarlett returned home to find her house ransacked. Nothing had been stolen, but the message was clear: she was in danger, and Matthew could be too if she didn't abandon her quest. Sitting amidst the wreckage of her daily life, Scarlett faced the harshest reality. Continuing her investigation meant risking not only her life, but also that of her son and the people she loved. If Matthew had been home when the criminals broke in, the worst could have happened. She remembered her husband's words: "When a criminal is close to being discovered, they take exaggerated measures. That's how we catch them." Scarlett felt she was close to uncovering the truth, which was why they came to her house. However, if she continued, she knew everything could become even more problematic. Scarlett knew she was taking a risky decision, but she had no choice but to report everything she had seen. She already had enough evidence to bring the criminals to justice, having gathered everything she found in the apartment, on the USB drive, and the documents Henry had left. However, she needed a confession to end it all. Despite feeling alone, her husband's sister had helped her gather evidence, even though she didn't believe Henry was alive. Now Scarlett knew she was on her own and had to solve everything by herself. "I have to protect my family at all costs," she said, resolute. The criminal network was a very powerful organization, according to the evidence. They operated nationwide, blackmailing and forging documents. They even posed as important people, infiltrating power structures to manipulate events in their favor, becoming almost untouchable due to their influence and the fear they spread. Henry somehow had become involved with this organization, or against it, fighting secretly to dismantle it, or perhaps being forced to work under its shadow. With the evidence in hand and the weight of the world on her shoulders, Scarlett made the call that could change everything. The number she had memorized from the previous threatening call was now her only direct line to face the criminal network that had disrupted her life and apparently involved Henry in ways she was still struggling to comprehend. "They need to be stopped for Matthew to be safe," Scarlett whispered to herself as she dialed the number with trembling fingers. The man on the other end tried to threaten her, but Scarlett was not intimidated and arranged a meeting with him to hand over everything she had against them. They might kill me, she thought, but there was no turning back. She couldn't allow them to harm her son or tarnish her husband's name. In the peak of her strength, Scarlett prayed to God, "Lord, please protect me and Matthew from harm. I know they are dangerous, but I have your protection." She felt a greater strength take hold of her. Arriving at the designated location, a forgotten and grim area of the city, Scarlett felt her heart pounding in her chest. She activated the listening device Henry's sister had given her and proceeded into the darkness. "Lord, protect me," she prayed. Suddenly she felt a hand grab her firmly and pull her into the shadows. Before she could scream, she saw who it was. Henry, alive, standing before her. The shock and joy of seeing him again were almost too much for Scarlett, but before she could fully process the situation, Henry pulled her close and kissed her passionately. She had no doubts about who he was. She would recognize that kiss even if everything around her ceased to exist. "I have a lot to explain, my love, but now we need to be quick," Henry said, his voice filled with urgency and relief at seeing her. Scarlett couldn't believe her eyes. "Is it really you, Henry? I don't believe it," she said, tears filling her eyes. Her heart raced, and the love she felt was enough for her to understand that this was the first time she had seen her husband. "I was a fool. How could I believe that Sebastian could be Henry?" There was no denying that her heart came alive seeing her husband in front of her. "You're alive, my love. I'm not crazy," she said, both to herself and to her husband. Before they could exchange more words, their presence was detected. Men Scarlett recognized from the photos on the USB drive emerged from the shadows, clearly ready to prevent any truth from being revealed. In a desperate act of the gathered evidence, but also the weight of a desperate hope to save Henry and Matthew, the police's decision to require a final confrontation felt both like a death sentence and a chance to end the madness once and for all. Before she could formalize her plan with the police, Scarlett's phone rang. A cold, calculated voice on the other end of the line claimed to have Henry and Matthew. "If you want them to live, you'll have to hand over everything you've discovered," the voice demanded. However, she heard her son's cry in the background and Scarlett's world stopped. The air left her lungs and an icy terror took hold of her, but at the same time a fierce determination filled her. She wouldn't bow to their demands. She would find a way to save him. With the police by her side, Scarlett devised a risky plan. She would make the handover, but on her terms, ensuring the police were ready to intervene and capture the criminals, saving Henry and Matthew. It was a dangerous game, one that put her at risk, but Scarlett was willing to do anything to save her family. In the early hours of the morning, Scarlett headed to the designated location, an abandoned warehouse on the city's outskirts. The darkness was intense, but she knew it would help the police hide. Holding a fake briefcase supposedly containing the evidence, she stepped into the warehouse. She had barely entered the vast echoing space when she saw figures moving in the darkness. Then Henry was pushed into the light, visibly injured but alive. Scarlett almost ran to him, but she held back, remembering the plan. However, seeing her little son in those men's hands made her legs weaken. "My little Matthew," she cried upon seeing her little one. It was torture not to touch him, knowing he was so close yet so unreachable. "Release my son and I'll hand over everything," Scarlett demanded, trying to keep her voice steady. Sebastian emerged from the shadows, smiling, his laughter sending chills down Scarlett's spine. "Who are you to decide anything? We own this city. Do you think you can make anyone believe you?" he mocked. "Hand over the evidence." "Why did you do this?" Scarlett asked, trying to see her son, but it was too dark for her vision to catch anything. "Why did Henry refuse to cooperate? He should do it for someone in the family, right?" Sebastian said, looking at Henry. Scarlett was confused, as she knew all of her husband's family and had never seen this man until the last few weeks. "You didn't tell her the truth, Henry," he said, turning to Scarlett. "He is my brother, even though our father abandoned me and pretended I didn't exist. When I started this organization and the police found out, I asked for his help, but he turned his back on his blood. I won't let you destroy what I've built," he finished, leaving Scarlett in shock. "Please let my son go," she pleaded, looking into Matthew's gray eyes. But Sebastian smiled. "This little boy here, I knew my sister had helped you, and imagine my surprise when I found your Matthew at the house. He was the first to see me, clever boy. He tried to run to call his aunt, but I was faster," Sebastian concluded, smiling. "Why did you lie? Why pretend to be Henry?" Scarlett asked, remembering when she saw him. "I needed to know if he had really died. The only person he would tell the truth to was you. so I pretended to be him to see if you would say something, but you knew nothing. However, I made a mistake since you started investigating me right after seeing me," he said, casting an irritated look at Scarlett. "Now, because of your curiosity, I have to kill you all. You know too much." He finished, pointing the gun at Scarlett first. Then everything happened very quickly. Signals were given and the police rushed into the warehouse. Chaos ensued as Scarlett ran towards Matthew to save him. However, shots rang out in the warehouse. Scarlett felt her heart stop for a moment. She saw Henry fighting one of the kidnappers, each of his movements marked by a wild determination to protect her and Matthew. And then, in the midst of the turmoil, she saw Matthew running towards her, arms outstretched, not fully understanding the danger, but knowing only that he wanted to be with his mother. The confrontation was filled with shouts, orders, and the dull thud of bodies fighting. Scarlett managed to hold Matthew, protecting him with her own body, while frantically looking for Henry, trying to ensure he was also safe. When the police finally apprehended all the men, she cried, "Thank you, my God, for taking care of my family," she prayed, as she hugged Matthew tightly against her, feeling the tears of relief and gratitude wetting her face. Henry joined them, his arms wrapping around his family in an embrace that Scarlett never wanted to end. "We are together now. That is all that matters," Henry whispered, kissing the top of Matthew's head and then Scarlett's lips. The police told Henry that they had everything they needed to keep Sebastian and his accomplices behind bars, so the family headed home. Scarlett still could not believe that her husband was alive. She found herself looking at him, as if he might disappear. "I love you, my love, I'm okay," Henry said every time he felt Scarlett's worried gaze. "I knew we would make it," she said, relieved that they were safe. Zoe, Henry's sister, was already at the house waiting for them. The relief and worry were clearly visible on her face. "I am so sorry I did not arrive earlier to stop Sebastian from taking Matthew. He broke into my house, probably found out that we were investigating, and took our boy," she cried, hugging her nephew. "I would never have forgiven myself if something had happened," she said, tears streaming down her face as she joined the family embrace. Henry took advantage of the moment of calm to explain the inexplicable. "I had to fake my death to protect all of you," he began, his voice laden with pain and regret. "I spent my whole life believing I only had one sister. I could never have imagined that our father was capable of hiding such important information. I was having a normal day at work when Sebastian came to me. He was a criminal, asking me to help him get an investigator from another precinct to stop investigating him. I started to get close and pretended to help his organization to gather evidence. However, he discovered that I was investigating him. Sebastian's organization was very cruel. They blackmailed everyone and killed those they could not manipulate. I knew you would be at risk, so faking my death was the only way I could keep you safe while collecting the necessary evidence to bring them down." Scarlett listened, trying to absorb every word. "And Matthew?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Was it you who took him to the park?" she asked, not understanding. Henry nodded. "The last thing I wanted was to involve our son in this, but I knew he was at risk, so I wanted to scare you into stopping the investigation because I knew what Sebastian was capable of. When he found out I was alive, he went after you, so I had to act. I wanted to scare you into hiding and do the same with Matthew," Henry explained, holding Scarlett's hand tightly. "I warned you at the building that you needed to stop investigating," he said, but then smiled. "I am glad you did not listen to me, my love. You saved all of us. You saved our family. I owe you my life." "Without you, there is no life," she replied, crying. Henry's words seeped into his wife's heart. Against all odds, Scarlett had fought for her family, exposing the criminal network and bringing Henry back to them. Now, with the truth revealed and justice prevailing, they could begin to rebuild their lives as a family. In the days that followed, as the dust settled and normalcy began to return, Scarlett, Henry, and Matthew spent their days together, strengthening the bonds that united them. They visited the park where Matthew had talked about having ice cream with his father, this time as a complete family, without fears or secrets haunting them. "I promise I will never leave you again, my love," Henry said to Scarlett, as they watched Matthew play. "No more secrets, no more darkness." As the lives of Scarlett, Henry, and Matthew stabilized after the tumultuous events, they found reasons to celebrate new beginnings. Scarlett, with the determination that had guided her through the shadows, finally fulfilled her dream of opening her own pastry shop. Called Sweet Hopes, the store quickly became a beacon in the community, a place where Scarlett's recipes filled the air with sweet promises and hope. Each cake, each sweet, was a celebration of her journey, from darkness to light, from despair to joy. Henry, in turn, was recognized for his bravery and dedication in dismantling the criminal network alongside his wife. They mentioned Scarlett's effort at a ceremony at the precinct. Henry received a Medal of Honor, a symbol of gratitude and recognition for his sacrifice and courage. His colleagues, who once mourned his loss, now celebrated his return and his achievements. Henry accepted the honor with humility, saying that the one who deserved the medal was his wife, knowing that the true reward was being able to be by his family's side, free from the shadows of the past. Henry's sister Zoe was by their side during these moments of celebration, her presence a constant reminder of the unconditional support and love that helped them overcome the challenges. The family's unity had never been stronger, and the bonds that held them together were unbreakable. One sunny afternoon, Scarlett and Henry held a small party at the pastry shop to celebrate Henry's Medal of Honor and the success of Scarlett's new venture. Friends, family, and customers gathered, sharing laughter and stories, while Matthew ran joyfully among them, his laughter filling the space with pure happiness. "Who would have thought, huh?" Henry said to Scarlett, his arm around her as they watched the celebration around them. "Of all the battles we faced, here we are, stronger and more united than ever." Scarlett smiled, her head resting on Henry's shoulder. "We did it together," she replied, "and as long as we are together, I know there is nothing we cannot face." And so, amid sweet flavors and shared memories, Scarlett and Henry looked to the future, knowing that love, courage, and hope were the true ingredients for a happy and fulfilled life. They had found their sweet victory, not only in Scarlett's pastry shop or Henry's medal, but in the simple fact of being able to be together, as a family, facing whatever the future held for them. If you like this story, we invite you to like and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to continue bringing exciting stories almost every day. Do not miss the next surprising narrative that is about to appear on your screen. We immensely appreciate your support. Now you can click on the links that are appearing on the screen right now. We have a special selection just for you, full of valuable stories and guaranteed entertainment. See you there.